These plastic grids will support the weight of a car, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to install them as if you were starting your front garden from scratch.
You put a landscape fabric, that's this stuff, over the soil, and then that will let the water drain through but also stop the weeds coming up through it at the same time. And then on top of that we put a layer of sand, and then we just bed this stuff in to the top of it. You can fill it with all sorts of stuff. Say you wanted to have a lawn, you would use a nice bit of loamy topsoil with a bit of sand in there as well. Most people oversow, they put too much down, so just sprinkle a light amount generally. The ideal time to do this is late summer, early autumn, and then keep it well watered while it establishes itself. And that'll green up in no time. You'll have a lovely lawn that you can actually drive the car over.
Because there's 3 concrete cylinders, it's really nice to kind of play around with their relationship with each other.
Because they're not only raised veg beds, their function, they're also a piece of sculpture. So it's really key where they go, their layout, and especially with the lay of the land, they really need to work with that angle.
So tilting these on their side and kind of playing around with their form kind of takes them away from being a veg bed, like a traditional veg bed, and much more like a bit of sculpture or a bit of art.
One of the key issues with a large garden is that small features just disappear. Big pieces of sculpture can cost a fortune, but these concrete silos will make a big impact without blowing the budget.
The only thing to do is really just to go for it. I'm just using really sort of heavy-duty kitchen scissors just because they give me that little bit of control. And all I want to do initially is to sort of mark off where that line is.
The next step is to remove the string and to begin cutting a little deeper to increase the definition of the spiral.
You know, I could go on tweaking this probably all night long. However, I think that's pretty good. Definitely the shape's there, the spiral's there.
I'm using here various pieces of rock to just try and create a visual perception of a ridge, of mountains. And I'm going to create some planting pockets because I want to raise the surface slightly so it looks like it's actually got a bit of texture and a bit of height. And once I've positioned where I basically want them, I'm going to put in a little bit more compost around those plants. Just firm those plants in when you're happy with the position. And what you're aiming to do is to trickle those pieces of stone under the neck of the plant. That means the water will drain away, but it also makes the plant look like it's erupted and grown.
If you've already got a lawn in your front garden and you're thinking of turning it into a car park, well, why don't you use this stuff again? But just turn it over. And what you do is actually just push it into the ground, a bit like a pastry cutter, yeah? And that will actually let the grass grow through it, but be able to take the weight of a car as well.
I'm just going to start with some string. Right, and now I'm going to use this to create the spiral shape that I'm going to follow when I start cutting. So, just got to get it on a diagonal. And I'm trying to keep these broader as you go down. So here a little bit tighter towards the top and then broadening out lower down.
Herbs. They're the most accommodating of plants, happy in the soil in your garden or in containers, even unusual ones like my customised wheelbarrow. In fact, they'll grow in any type of pot. The only thing to know is that you've got to have a drainage hole in the bottom to allow excess moisture to escape. And also, if you're planting them in the soil, dig in a bit of this stuff, it's horticultural grit. It just speeds up drainage so the roots don't sit wet in winter. If you do that, give them some sun, your herbs will love you for it.
When it comes to cutting, first thing in the morning is absolutely ideal because the flowers are going to be really full of water that they'll have taken up during the night, and so they'll be really strong and sturdy on the stems. And then if you've got a bucket right next to you as you cut, filled with fresh, cool water, then you put them straight into that, and that forces the water back up the stem to the flower. Arranging flowers is just the best, you know, it's that culmination of everything that you've done up to that point. And there are no rules. What I'm doing with this type of dill is just creating a framework. It's almost like using those metal frames that you can buy for floristry, but here you've got a natural one. And instead of using a foliage base, this is going to give me that lovely injection of a bright acidic green as well, which is a great contrast to these other strong colours I've chosen.
Having
An area of the garden like this, just a few pieces of rotting, decomposing wood, is very important for a healthy ecosystem. If you don't have room for a pile of logs, just avoid sweeping up dead leaves, as they will also be decomposed by your creepy crawlies. And they, in turn, will become food for another important garden inhabitant that you can invite with the right plants.
Now, I have made this lovely little raised bed for my strawberries. Now, I've put some dowels in, and then this is plumber's pipe. You can pick it up from any kind of plumber or DIY merchant, and it makes a perfect sort of structure to put your netting over.
By crossing the pipes and attaching them to the dowels, my structure is almost there. Just secure the pipes with a cable tie in the centre for added stability.
So what you need next is some form of protection, and that's netting. Now, you can use all sorts of things, but what matters is the size of the netting. If you go and get netting which is too finely woven, you will keep out your pollinators. If you don't have pollinators, you don't get any fruit. So that detail matters a lot.
Evenly layer the netting over your cage, making sure that it comes all the way to the ground on all sides.
It's not only birds that need a helping hand. How about this bat roosting box? This simile is perfect for them. They enter up this way, and if you put it high up in a tree, they could be adding to the biodiversity in your garden.
Lettuces are crucial in my beautiful edible garden. I'm starting to sow them in wine boxes, salvaged from an off-licence and filled with compost from the garden centre. For my patio, I've chosen to sow cut and come again salad leaves. You don't pull them up, roots and all, like big lettuces. You simply trim off the leaves, which then regrow for another couple of servings.
Now, you never want to sow out of the packet because you have very little control if you do it that way, and you'll sow the best part of the packet in one go. So you take out a small amount, and I'm just scattering it across the top of the wine box. But you just need to slightly tease the seed into the soil and then firm it down just so the seed's in contact with the soil.
3 weeks after sowing, there are baby leaves sprouting. However, they are growing too close together, threatening to strangle each other.
So you have to start thinning, and you're aiming to have, on this kind of cut and come again system, lettuce roughly 1 centimetre apart. Now, you don't want to waste any of these. You could chop off the roots, have them for tea.
If you're going to have a running bamboo, you need to contain the roots, and you do it with this stuff. Plastic root barrier. Lots of different types of this stuff, but essentially it is a 75 centimetre deep piece of plastic that you bury down into the soil. It doesn't need a base because bamboo doesn't root deeply. Make sure the edges overlap by a couple of feet and take them together so the roots can't get between. Now, the bamboo I've got here is a really lovely thing. It's a Phylostachys aurea. What I always do is just set the bamboo a little bit deeper than it was in its pot, just the bottom couple of inches. I find that they tend to like that. Keeps the root ball a bit moist. Add a bit more compost. Because if you feed them, you get just magnificently tall canes, and they come up nice and thick as well. And the final job, once you've given your plant a good water in, is to trim down the plastic. Leave it a few centimetres proud of the soil surface. The roots grow along sideways and then go up and over. But if you leave the plastic high, there's less likelihood that that will happen. And if they do, well, it's not the end of the world. It's to go along with a pair of secateurs and snip them off to keep them confined.
Chickens are basically easy to look after, but you do have to clip their wings to stop them from flying away. And that's one bit I'm not looking forward to.
What we've got to do, they are the flight feathers. We feel for the end of the wing so that we make sure we don't cut the wing. And we take off flight feathers. It's only like you cutting your toenails, no problem at all. And done properly, you can't actually see she's been done.
But and how often do I have to do that?
Once every 6 months or so, whenever she has been in moult.
Yes.
And when she starts to grow new feathers, otherwise she will replace them.
In the old garden, the garage was a real eyesore, so the boys have come up with something to help screen it.
So these are reinforced steel mesh sheets, and you can pick it up for any like builders merchants, but we managed to salvage this one. But this will be a really nice frame for climbers to grow up and just add that extra bit of greenery.
50mm holes are drilled into timber posts so that the mesh can slot in.
Fingers crossed.
Start at your end.
Work your way up. He's in.
Yeah, it's going.
Perfect. So then this will stand up and there'll be another post on this end. Beautiful.
Yeah, really nice.
Spot on.
David's wire mesh screen is ready to go in at the end of the border nearest the garage.
Bit of a long leg there, guys, but otherwise, really nice. That's going to look awesome. Barry, look.
Yeah.
Now, with the Amalanke shrub, look at the rusty colours of the leaves and the rust. It's going to look really nice.
Slotted into place, a bit of concrete, and it will be set for life.
And this I have grown in my garden this year, but I think it must have self-seeded itself.
The Schultz here.
Is that what it is?
They're Californian poppies. They will self-seed.
Oh, I did buy a
you
packet
can
of
get them in a range of shades, but they tend to all revert back to the orange in due course.
These aren't strictly Portuguese plants, but that doesn't matter because they offer exactly what Jan and John want. Lots of colour and the stamina to stand up to the British weather.
Graham, I really like the nerines. Would they obviously survive in the Mediterranean?
They like to be baked in the full sun. You can see that their bulbs sit on the soil. They will actually, if you plant them in the soil, they'll bring themselves to the surface.
OK,
That's
so they
how
wriggle
they
up
like
to the
it.
top.
And they are wonderful for that shocking pink.
They're on the list, I think.
Good. If you want to have something really exotic, have an agave. And this particular one is Agave montana, which we find actually is the toughest, hardiest one for growing outside. And you can see how big it is. And that has grown to that size.
Nothing says sunshine more than a palm tree, and Jan is determined to have one. That's if it can survive, of course.
I'm not really sure how hardy or easy or how fast they grow.
These ones, Trachycarpus fortunei, are as hardy as they can possibly be.
Yeah?
They've been grown in this country since the early 19th century. They're as tough as old boots. They are actually from more forest-type areas rather than desert trees.
So there are palm trees that look like palm trees but actually aren't from that sort of climate?
That's right, and in actual fact, they almost prefer a bit of shade.
Ah, OK.
Rather than being in the full sun all the time.
Right, which would be perfect.